Okay, question number 2 from one of the Solomon papers from the C3 series, which is now known as P3. This is a question about algebraic fractions, and I was asked about part B by one of my students. I use these questions for my end of topic worksheets, and this is the question I was actually asked about. I'll just do the whole question. It's question 4 from my worksheet and question 2 from the Solomon paper from which I took the question. Okay, which is Solomon K. Now, first let's just go through the whole question. First it says express 4x over x squared minus 9 minus 2 over x plus 3 as a single fraction in its simplest form. So when we want to add or subtract fractions together, we have to try to make the denominators the same. Now here the denominators at first sight look completely different. It's like this is a quadratic and this is a linear. However, you should soon notice that when you factorize x squared minus 9, you have a difference of squares. Okay, and one of the factors is the same as x plus 3. You get x plus 3, x minus 3. So that would be the first step, to write this as x plus 3 times x minus 3. And you got minus 2 over x plus 3. Now what we can do here is we can make the denominators the same by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator of this by x minus 3. Now the denominators are the same. I haven't changed this fraction, okay, but I haven't changed the value of this fraction. I've just changed the way it looks. Now I made it look like the same as that, just like adding normal fractions together. Okay, so now I have a common denominator of x plus 3, x minus 3. My numerator is 4x minus 2 times x minus 3. I always like to write this step out. I don't like to rush and multiply out that bracket, especially when there's a minus sign involved between them, because a lot of times you'll say minus 2x and you'll say minus 6. Not looking at this minus sign here. This is going to be minus 2x and plus 6, you see. 4x minus 2x, and you've got a minus 2 times minus 3, which is plus 6, over x plus 3, x minus 3, which gives you now 4x minus 2x is 2x, so you have 2x plus 6 over x plus 3, x minus 3. You can rewrite it as x squared minus 9 if you want. There's no, there will be a factor. Always keep it factorized, because I can see there's going to be a factor. So it's best to actually keep it in its factorized form, because you'll notice in the next step, you can take out 2 as a common factor, and you have 2 times x plus 3 over x plus 3, x minus 3. And the x plus 3's will cancel out. So you're left in the end with 2 over x minus 3. Okay, so always leave it in its factorized form until the last step in case you find a common factor. Well, that's a pretty simple IGCSE style question. No problem with that. The real question that was asked was part B. And here it tells us to simplify this algebraic fraction. Now when we simplify fractions, we look for common factors in the numerator and the denominator, which means we have to try to factorize the numerator and the denominator. Okay, factorizing the denominator seems pretty simple as it's a quadratic. So let's just do that on the side here. So I'm going to try to factorize 3x squared minus 8x plus 4. Okay, so I'm going to use my window method. 3x squared and plus 4. So two numbers, when you multiply them together, you get 12x squared positive. And when you add them, you get minus 8x. Well, they must both be negative because you get a positive product and a negative sum. And two numbers multiply to give you 12 and add to give you 8, 6 and 2. So it must be minus 6x and minus 2x. Those both give me 12x squared, and those add up to minus 8x. That's correct. So now we look for common factors. So we got x is common in these two terms, which I'll write over there. And 3x is common in these two terms, which I'll write over there. X times something gives me minus 2x, that's a minus 2, and 3x times something gives me minus 6x, that's also minus 2. So we can just check to see if that works out. Plus 4, yes it does. So we end up with 3x minus 2 times x minus 2. So I know that this part of it is going to be 3x minus 2 and x minus 2. Okay, now I want to deal with x cubed minus 8. Okay, so x cubed minus 8. Now this is the sticking point for many of you. Now what you should remember from P2 is when you want to factorize a cubic expression, okay, and there's not like x is common in all the terms, then there's something called the factor theorem, which we use, where if you can find a value of x that you substitute into this, you end up with 0, then we know that x minus that value is going to be a factor. So for example here, let's just call this fx. I know that if I substitute the value 2, into this expression here, I'll get 2 cubed minus 8, which is 8 minus 8, which is 0. So that means x minus 2 is a factor. Okay? Now, if I know that x minus 2 is a factor, then what I can do is I've got a choice. I could use algebraic long division. I can say x minus 2 divided into, now I've got x cubed. Now remember, we have to fill in all the spaces when we're doing long division. Any term that's missing, we write 0 that term. So 0x squared plus 0x minus 8. Alternatively, I'm going to do both ways so you can see. I could use the fact that x minus 2 times, now I know that it's going to be x squared, okay, because x times x is x cubed, but then I'm going to have, let's call it for example, plus ax plus b. It's going to be some sort of quadratic I'm going to have. I know that's going to be x cubed. Then I'm going to have something, an x term, and then a constant term. That gives me x cubed minus 8. Okay, that's another way I could do it, by comparing coefficients. But I'll show you both ways. Let's do this way first. Now for algebraic long division, you know x into x cubed goes x squared times. So x times x is x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times minus 2 is minus 2x squared. Then we subtract these two lines. That gives you 0, of course. That will give you 0 minus minus 2, which is plus 2. So you have 2x squared. You bring down the next term, which is 0x. Then you ask yourself, x into 2x squared goes plus 2x times, sorry. So 2x times x is 2x squared. And 2x times minus 2 is minus 4x. And again, we subtract these two lines. That will give you 0x squared, and that will give you plus 4x. Bring down the next term, which is a minus 8. X into 4x goes plus 4 times. 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times minus 2 is minus 8. Now I have no remainder, so I know that x cubed minus 8 is going to be equal to x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 4. Okay, x squared plus 2x plus 4. And then if I continue, I can continue. Let me just show you how we can do the same thing using this technique. I can compare the coefficients of, for example, the constants. That's the easiest thing to do. The constants, I can see that on the right side, the constant is going to be minus 2 times b. So minus 2b is equal to the constant on the left side is minus 8. So I can see b is equal to minus 4. So I know that's going to be a minus 4, as we can see from the, so it's going to be a plus 4, silly me. It's a minus divided by minus is plus. Okay, so b is equal to 4. And then we can compare the coefficients of x's. Okay, on the left side here, the x term will be, when I do x times b, so that's bx. And also when you have minus 2 times ax. That will be the other x term, so minus 2a. So I don't need to write the x. I can just say b. I have b times x, so that's b. And I have minus 2 times ax, so minus 2a. Those are the only x terms that you get when you expand this. And on the right side, you have 0x terms. It's x cubed plus 0x squared plus 0x. So that's equal to 0. Now I know b is already equal to 4, so I can say 4 is equal to 2a. So a is equal to 2, as we saw here. So we can say that x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x and plus 4. Exactly the same answer we got in two different ways. Okay, so now, so I know that this is, can I factorize this any further? Two numbers multiplied to give you 4 and add to give you 2. No, you can't. So let's just, we can stop, we can say x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 4. Okay, so now we can continue down here. So let me just write out that question part again. So you got x cubed minus 8 over 3x squared minus 8x plus 4. 3x squared minus 8x plus 4 is equal to x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 4 divided by, and we got 3x minus 2 and x minus 2. 3x minus 2 and x minus 2. The x minus 2 cancels out, and you're left with x squared plus 2x plus 4, which can't be factorized any further, divided by 3x minus 2, and that is our answer to this question. Just make sure the question just asks us to do that. It says simplify, yeah. So there we have the answer to part B. This was a question that was actually asked, and the trick here is to know how to factorize x cubed minus 8. And as we should have remembered from P2, that factorizing cubic expressions involves using the factor theorem and finding a factor by finding a value of x which causes the expression to become 0, then x minus that value will be a factor. Okay, so there we have the answer to that question.